Hello, I'm Charlie Raphael, and you're watching AnyButton2Start. On today's inaugural episode of Neo Ludens, the Play Element podcast, I'll be speaking with video game reviewer and video essayist KBash. We touch on the unique challenges to writing about video games, the current state of games criticism, and the role auteur theory has in humanizing stories of game development. This ongoing interview series, inspired by game studies, linguistics, and anthropology, will be releasing new episodes every month. So if you'd like to hear more from some of the most interesting voices in games criticism and discourse, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. Now, without further ado, KBash. Hello, Kevin from KBash. Thanks for sitting down with me today to talk about video games, your videos, and just stuff in general.
No trouble, happy to be here. I love talking about video games and becoming a big-time sweat in real time.
Hell yeah. Hell yes. So you make videos and video essays and reviews about video games. You often cover entire series and you do retrospective style stuff. So let's start really simple. What's your process for researching a game and choosing games to cover in your videos?
Right. Okay, I started originally doing just weirdo games that I found on the internet because I've always been into weird things I found at the game store. Like, I found Yggdra Union at 15, and since then it was over. However, I transitioned into more popular works and videos that I pulled from patrons, like covering KOTOR and Xenoblade and things I wasn't necessarily interested in. But that helped me to grow as a person and shape my tastes and things like that, experiencing things I never would have. And nowadays, I'm much more going down my own individual rabbit holes, things I stumble across for curiosity's sake, because I've been immersed in this so long. And as for research, in the old days, I almost did nothing because I came from a whole different, culture of YouTube review. And nowadays, I'm digging into the whole Wikipedia article, which, then all the interviews, then the manual for the game and the art books and dev interviews and fishing for obscure dev quotes. I've, in one case, found developer discussions, vlogs on YouTube and incorporated them into videos and things like this. I trawl for comments in video, like YouTube video long plays and things, to see how people reacted to the games, and sometimes also other video makers, just in the case that it's like a rare game or an uncommonly talked about game, to see what other people are thinking in that particular moment. Though I often tend to find disagreements or this or that, I just like to balance or weigh other people's views. That's all.
Yeah, that's totally valid. I think getting other people's opinions is like a big part, especially with the retrospective type of video.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, your half of the video, at least to my mind, a good retrospective video essay, half of it is basically responding to the legacy of the piece that you're covering. So that makes perfect sense to me. Your videos are very long sometimes, and as I said, you cover the entirety of series, or at least big chunks of series occasionally. So what do you think, a large scope video essay or review, a long runtime, how do you think that can affect your criticism, and how do you think the runtime affects your analysis of individual game design elements and game design structures?
Yes. This is a great question. I've wrestled with this many times in the past, and the thing is, especially if people have been around for a very long time, anyone watching this, my channel started as a very small, quick bite look at single games, but I transitioned into full series. But even for a midpoint, there was a time where I was covering Thief 1 for 5 minutes in a full Thief video, right? And that lasted about 35 minutes or 30 minutes. And as I got more invested and cared more and had more to say, or covered long RPGs, the videos ballooned, and I found that I couldn't cut as much as easily as I used to. Now I do predominantly long videos, though I intersperse short ones in between. And part of that is just how the method evolved. Long videos are a problem, though, in a sense, for me, because I'll be reviewing all of Valkyria Chronicles or something. Here's every Valkyria Chronicles game, all 5. And that can have value and weight. It gives you a lot of room to breathe. It gives you a lot of room to talk and weigh the legacies of each game against one another in a sequence. However, when you make this kind of video multiple times, you end up telling the same story multiple times, which is so often you have a prototype experience that's really neat, and then you get a sequel that's really good, and then it starts falling off or getting weird as publisher interests or creator interest or developers like fall away and change. And when you tell that story so many times, you hunger for something deeper. So I'm pivoting more into the essay space lately and in the future, but I'm right at the cusp of that now. Anyway, long videos can be a problem. They can be useful for getting a full picture, but they can be problematic for getting a tight, cohesive thesis, which is so important to, essays. That's all.
It's so funny that it's become almost like a meme because of a trend of long video essays.
Yeah.
You are amongst a pantheon of other great creators who make stuff that is frankly sometimes too long. It's very, very long. But I mean, I might skip forward a question because it intersects with this quite interestingly.
Okay.
You've mentioned in some of your videos, especially the longer ones, that you are aware, or you've hinted towards the fact that you are aware that people treat your videos and other videos like it sort of in a passive sort of sense. Whether I think you've mentioned before, you made a joke about somebody doing the laundry or they're cooking whilst watching one of your videos, which obviously is not a totally not valid way to consume your content and content like it.
Right.
But how does that knowledge of people maybe not giving you their full attention, especially during these longer videos, how does that affect the way you're writing and the way you're covering these games?
That's okay, and that's part of why videos run so long these days, is there's a demand for it. But I am, how do I say this in a way that's like polite and not accusatory or something? Because like I'm having like a modern abstract painter moment in American history where I'm getting overly deep into my process and caring a lot about what I do, but the demand for the product is very different, and what people get out of it is very different. So, I recently ran into someone at a wedding who was discussing this with me, how they, as a viewer of YouTube, always want to find the longest thing on the thing they covered because they want to make sure they hear everything they missed, which was mind-blowing to me because I never even thought of doing that myself, ever. Like, I don't care about hearing about every side quest, but this person was really into that. And so I dislike the idea that videos have become passive podcast experiences, but I also consume many of them like that. And that, I feel like it tells on itself. I want to put all of this craft into a video to make something watchable, to make something have visual aids, to make something spark any kind of emotion or something in the viewer, and match the video to what I'm talking about, and that craft dissipates the way it's actually engaged with most frequently by many people online, and especially in the long YouTube video era. And I can't really control that, so I'm more or less forced to rein my own ego in it and, take myself less seriously. Though, as the creator, you always want to be the guy who can make the one that people watch.
Yeah.
But it's challenging. And it's why I have so many like cues of visual like flares or audio flares, edits, things like that to get people like back into the video. At least sometimes I'm reduced to second monitor status, which is like mildly more tolerable than just, not being watched. But whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot there. I mean, as a creator, you obviously want to be taken on your own values and your own merits. But you, as you said with that wedding anecdote, you can't really predict what the audience wants. Even if a video does well, you might not understand what the audience is really even responding to. And I mean, the YouTube analytics definitely don't necessarily understand what it is they're coming back for. They're just telling you this is your top 1 out of 10 video or whatever.
Right.
It's such an interesting intersection between, academic work of an analysis, canonization, and then, but the videos still, as you said, they exist as products, and they have to fit the market in which they're being birthed into, which is retention based, watch time based, and you said you're trying to push back against the ego, but there's almost not even an incentive to push back against the ego, because
And that's the problem, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
not to cut you off.
no, I'm please, yeah,
Like,
go ahead.
I often want to buck the current trend by doing what I've always done, which, if you go to my oldest stuff, they're ridiculous, but they're highly energetic and injected with a ton of unnecessary personality, jarring stuff, genuinely, friction. And there's a direct incentive on YouTube to not do that on YouTube. And as people, by the way, who care about a medium, video games, I presumably will care about the medium of YouTube as a delivery mechanism. So I do care about craft and all that stuff. But again, I'm incentivized per the platform to peel back on myself, which is fascinating and kind of sucks, not gonna lie.
Yeah, nowadays you're trying to walk the balance between too much of yourself, not enough of yourself. Where does the ego come in? Where does the product, where does the criticism come in? Sort of that balancing act. But your videos have a lot of humor, and as you said, a lot of moments of friction and moments of personality.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned that you come from a slightly different lineage than maybe the video essay, bread tubey type, faux academic, pseudo intellectual type. And when I watch your videos, I don't mean this as an insult at all.
Oh, it's fine. It's good.
I see a lot of angry video game nerd and the character-based video reviews that were sort of the first burst of energy in the YouTube video game space. How much influence did you take from that sphere, and does it still influence you today, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, that again, incredible question, because nail on the head. And I hate to admit who I came from, but like, let's call a spade, right? My channel is born from the Aaron Hansons and the Jontrons of like 8-10 years ago. The thing is, I've also drifted so far away from those people, both as a viewer. I don't watch either. I haven't watched those people for like 6 years or more. It's been a long time. But so much of my experience with YouTube and my ethos has informed what I did. Back then, I watched videos religiously all the time, and I was deeply interested in picking apart what they were doing, how they presented, why they were so charismatic, why they were good. And I wanted to make material that was fun and engaging and flashy and interesting. And I felt that those guys managed to do it, even when, like, regardless of whether they were good or not as review, if that makes sense. And that's where my earliest stuff comes from, is that. And it's why my earliest stuff is so uncharitable and kind of mean-spirited and cruel and kind of gamery, actually highly gamery. The problem is, during all of my YouTube career, I was in education, like teaching. Not as a, like, I did daycare, I taught in Korea before I even started YouTube. I started substituting in high school during my earlier YouTube career as well. And during this time, I'm also educating myself on politics and culture and things. So if you watch my show from the beginning to the latest, it's insane the level of change as you watch a person try to emulate old things and move into themselves and change and grow as a person over that time. It's very creepy in a sense, because it's like,
I'm sure for you it's creepy, but for the viewer, it just feels natural, no?
That's fair. Like, listening to my academic talk now, the old me could not even attempt some of that stuff.
Right.
But I was a learning, 20-something. So, yeah. And now I'm 33.
Well, there's still a lot of humor in your videos, and there's still a lot of moments of you called it friction. I guess that is the best word for it, you know, the breaks in the smoothness of the video to bring attention to something. And I think you use humor in an interesting way, in a way that sort of the AVGNs and the zero punctuations and Aaron Hanson's and such sort of started to tickle with, but didn't really get all the way, which is your jokes often are reinforcements of the point you just made, or the point you're about to make, or the theme of the section of the video that it's placed in. How do you use humor to communicate games criticism or just thoughts in general?
First of all, thank you, and second, humor is so unbelievably important to me as a person. It's intrinsic to who I am. I watched my mother as a teacher like employ humor, and it came to me naturally as well. But more importantly, past that, I think a lot of people leave humor on the table because there's a desire to, convey intelligence. And for many people, the appearance of intelligence is dour or precise and without any kind of unnecessary dalliance in humor, in laughter. All I know is many of the best writers ever have been also funny, even if not all the time. Certainly the ones that I've engaged with, and can use it as a means of breaking the flow. In particular, I think people ignore the sort of vibrant rhythm that humor can bring to something. A lot of people aren't tuned in to language as rhythm and won't use those moments that humor can create to break things up, to create a new paragraph, to refresh the palette, to put a new perspective on something, to undercut expectations. Humor is such a varied and I don't know. It's a vessel for so much. And it sickens me that so much of games criticism refuses to even bother. Not because I think everyone should be funny. Certainly not everyone can be, and that's fine. But because it's often also disrespected broadly by people looking for quality. Like I've seen people, because I'm known for joking, be like, oh, this whole, like, your whole video is like incoherent and you're like a yuckster and like, why, like, what the fuck, this is dumb. And I'm sitting there like, I just dropped probably one of the more substantial critiques that this game will ever receive. But because I told a joke, you're like incapable in your brain of like squaring the two different, like the analysis and the humor. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it is
definitely
genuinely concerning, but you understand where then the pull comes from for people to present in a very like strict and again dour sense.
See,
I just reject it personally.
I see that, and I definitely understand it. I'm working on a video myself, which is very, I mean, we talked about ego earlier. This is the ultimate ego. I'm making a video called the Video Game Video Essay Manifesto. And one of my points in it is you don't have to be funny. Not necessarily you shouldn't be funny, but you don't have to be funny. Because I often find that on the flip side of what you were saying of people being too dour, you occasionally get people who do this awful thing where almost the opposite of what I was praising you for, which is they will undercut their own criticism by making light of it just afterwards. And to me, that
I've been guilty of this too.
Right. That's you saying that, not me.
It's true.
But it, to me, occasionally it just comes across as not being secure in the point being made.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct.
Could you talk on that? Do you, like you said, you had experience with that?
That's something I wrestle with today. While I love humor and while it's a part of me, I am also aware of my tendency to undercut with a joke, or to feel that I must spice this section up. It's just not good enough unless I have some kind of beat. But
you don't have to be funny, KBash. You don't.
As he says, listen, correct. Seriously, because there is a point where it's jarring. There is a point where it detracts. And that's the thing. You have to be like deliberate with it. And it's also kind of a function of craft as well. Like, not everyone should do it because not everyone can do it. And the people who are doing it are still fumbling it anyway. It's very
Yeah.
challenging.
When it hits, it's brilliant, and it can reinforce and encapsulate like a point so well.
Yes.
But on that flip side, there is an undercutting factor that makes occasionally it feel like what is being said is not necessarily 100% believed. And
Yeah.
for someone like me, and it seems like yourself, who cares deeply about games as a medium, it can occasionally feel like a put down of the medium itself, or maybe not so grand, but maybe just the piece being covered in whatever is being talked about, you know?
Yeah. And that's so true, because humor is so often knowing your audience, but knowing your audience is so often knowing the subject matter at all. And oftentimes, humorists aren't deeply embroiled in games discussion in the first place, or history, or whatever. So many jokes can fall flat purely from like raw ignorance, which is maybe not even the fault of the creator as much as like a reality of their youth or something. That's definitely my case when I started. And I swear that's how my humor got better, is by continually being curious.
Yes.
It's weird.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. This idea of curiosity, and there's like a play. Oh God, there's a play element within humor, right? Like what you're
Yeah.
doing when you're taking a point and then trying to put like a joke into it, or flip it into a joke, is you're playing with those thoughts, and you're rearranging them, and you're making them malleable. So I think the at the top end, jokes in games criticism sort of end up embodying the medium of games themselves by incorporating, like, because jokes have mechanics, right?
Yes.
And as a joker, you're also a player, and you're playing with these thoughts and ideas. So I think on that top end, it's transcendent in its rhetoric power, but it has to have those sound mechanics. It's like a game in a sense where if the systems aren't built with coherent mechanics, then no one can understand it, and it only ends up undercutting whatever point anyone was trying to make, whether dev or YouTuber, you know?
Yeah. People at home, if you're not listening to this, tune in right now, because that was like aces. Please.
Stop it. Stop it, KBash. Jeez, man. Have you read Homo Ludens by
No,
Johann Huizinga? So
I have not.
the title for this interview series is Neo Ludens, which
Okay.
means new play. And Kojima references Homo Ludens a bunch in Death Stranding and Death Stranding 2. It was basic. Do you know what it is before I
No, go
mansplain?
on, please.
It's a book written in the 1800s by a linguist called Johann Huizinga. It's called Homo Ludens, a study of the play element in culture. And that whole spiel I just made about humor being play, that's basically, I plagiarized that from that old guy. But the whole idea of the book is that we find play within every aspect of life, and that play is a fundamental part of building societies and cultures. So I really think that within writing, and within the YouTube video essay space, because we're on YouTube, that is something that needs to be understood more by the writers of many of these videos, is that whilst people come to YouTube video essays, video game video essays, to learn about games, it's very hard to learn about a game in a formulaic way, because most games, especially if you go retro, they get very, very different and esoteric in their control schemes and stuff. So
Yes.
actually incorporating elements of the structure of the game you're covering into the essay itself, similarly to how Tim Rogers did in the LA Noire review, even though, again, I didn't particularly like it. That's a really interesting way to go. And I think you do that when you cover a game in a chronological order. You don't do it all the time, but and you often, I'm telling you what you do in your videos, but these are just things I've noticed. when you're covering a game chronologically, you sometimes use the intro as the chronological section to sort of introduce a viewer to the world of the game, and then you start
Yes.
splintering off into, okay, here's gameplay systems, here's
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
and how do you think that mirroring structures of games, whether it be chronologically or structurally, how do you think that can help criticism in general and your videos in
Right.
specific?
Well, okay. Part of the issue here is that I do cover stuff chronologically and I don't, depending on the video. And in the past, I didn't as much.
Right.
And it's something that I came into doing more when it felt like it was a long RPG. And it's like, okay, I can do the premise and then I can do a little bit about critique and then I can do the next beat of the story. And then and I would walk through the game like that and use this beat to talk about this element of play. And I've done that. I've kind of experimented with that format in various ways throughout the years, but I've also done things completely in different orders where I just, here's Ninja Gaiden, here's the gameplay, I like it a lot, here's the bosses, and and whatever. How one structures one's video hopefully is intentional.
Yes.
Because, you're trying to reach some kind of resolution to all this noise. I definitely believe that chronological order coverage in a video game, like discussing every single beat in order, can be a drag. And one has to be aware of that, but also it can be utilized to highlight certain things and keep rhythm going, which is so important, at least in YouTube videos. Because not everyone is going to tune in for your section on music, so it damn well better be somewhere in the right place at the right time to feel like it matters. That's all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You keep on reminding me that these are things for people to watch, I've come at a lot of these questions in quite an abstract sort of way, but when you put it like that these are, you have to keep a viewer engaged, and there are some people who just genuinely won't be interested in X element of a game,
Yeah.
So how often are you thinking about oh, I can't put X section here because not enough people are interested? Are you
it's not quite as how do I say, as clear cut as that per se.
right?
And sometimes it has more to do with the subject matter at all. Like if I were talking about an RPG that's very famous, it is very likely that I will name drop the composer within the first 10 minutes. But I likely won't do a full music section unless I feel I can talk about it and how it benefits the world and immersion in the experience, etc. However, craft is still important when it comes to making an artifact for this medium. So I will, for example, never put a boss section before talking about the core gameplay, things like that. So, and that's kind of obvious stuff, right? However, I have always had a preference, and this is personal, not to do with any, and certainly does not bespeak any other creator's work, of highlighting things that I believe are useful for first understanding the material, then getting interested in the material, and then getting into the nerdy stuff. So I will often start with the premise to introduce people to the world. I'll highlight the play to get the quick bites so people can oh, this actually looks really cool. And then I'll talk about other things. And by the midsection, we're into the here's the nerdy mechanical stuff, and here's how I stunlocked the boss to death.
Yeah. The KBash hierarchy of needs.
Of needs, that's right.
Yeah.
But it's very much because I come from a teaching background, right? I'm trying to scaffold the concepts I get to. So that's a personal internal logical order, and you just do what you can. Sometimes you fail, sometimes you hit.
Yeah, that must the teaching background must in some ways be such a help, because you're thinking about it from a as you said, you would never put a boss battle section before the section talking about the base gameplay mechanics, because how's one meant to understand multiplication when they don't understand addition first? You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing, and that makes perfect sense. I mean, this idea that you are, in a sense, a teacher, you are a guide for a viewer into the world of a game, and using like a mix of just logic, your teaching background, and the structure of the game. You're figuring out the most frictionless way to do it, and then you then go back and add friction, which makes your videos unique and wonderful in their
That's
own
actually
right.
so true.
But weirdly, that mirrors game design, though.
Yeah.
That you spend most of the development time just trying to get it as smooth as possible, iron out as many kinks, and then you go back and you add hit stops or game feel type elements, so it's so interesting how, even without realizing it, creators mirror what they're talking about. And they do realize it in some senses, but in others, obviously, it's a little more subtle. It's just so interesting, man. KBash knows what he's doing. He knows.
KBash is mimetic of game design. Base.
Oh, that's the thumbnail. That's what's going in the thumbnail. Right. Where are we? Let's call out your call out of a nameless person. In your Dark Souls review series, there's a moment in which you lament another YouTuber's insistence on explaining basic aspects of video game design, like hit points. How much of your critique is formed by a respect for your audience, and how much of it is informed in contrast to other creators that we will not name here, and we're not trying to disparage anyone, but that you watch their videos and you might think, oh, well, I do this differently. How often are you thinking that?
Okay, I gotta contextualize this a little bit first.
Yeah, please. Listen, go ahead.
When I
Explain
started
yourself.
YouTube, right? Like when I started, maybe 3 videos, I covered a game called Magi Nation, and I got a comment, and they said, "Hey, this is a cool video, but you didn't explain how to play the game." And I was like, "What the fuck? I thought everyone would know how to do." But the thing is, not everyone does.
Right.
So I started adding more explainers into my videos, even though they were quite short by comparison to today's, heckin' chonkers. Wow, that was never again. Though there is an amount that I feel should be said, should be respected, and an amount that maybe doesn't need to be in the script because maybe it's padding things for no real reason, except for longer watch time and more ad slots. So the thing is, I got more into it based on feedback I'd received. I don't mention everything about a game in a video, even when my videos run long. Though I've been the subject of "this video is too long" criticism before, people will notice that even my longest videos are very often stitched together versions of multiple reviews. So like 30 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
Except in some cases like Radiata and Steambot and like Ease. But those are rare, and usually I have a reason for doing it like that. But anyway.
And as a viewer, they're like some of your best videos as well. So Thank
you so much.
They justify the length. They do.
I try. Boy, do I try. But I do feel... it's not that I think the creator is stupid. It's that I feel talked down to as an audience member when I've played Dungeons and Dragons before and someone is trying to tell me what hit points are and do
100%.
and what strength is. And I'm like, I mean, I can't lift a dresser. I know what strength is and isn't. And it's me. But like, what do you do? So I've often tried to keep the information tight. Sometimes I fail, but I just don't like having too much.
But isn't that also just about being like a good internal editor? Like,
yes, I think so. I think if that person were the person I was referring to were more I don't know, choosy about what they wanted to convey, it wouldn't have ended up in there, because it's like it really doesn't matter all that much. If you are into Dark Souls at all and you don't know what strength is, I don't know what to tell you. Why are you even watching Dark Souls videos?
Yeah.
What? Like everyone knows. Anyway, that's all.
Why are you even here, man? Get out of here.
It's just like also it just feels like kindergarten. Like, and now we're going to go over our math tables, and it's like, okay, that's all.
Yeah. I think at a certain point you do have to assume that if someone has found their way onto a even half an hour video about any given video game, they probably have some prior investment that you can rely on as a creator, that you don't have to retread already trodden ground, you know?
That's the thing. And this is also, I will say, where essayists and reviewers have historically differed. Essayists come, and me as well, historically came from the bachelor's degree program. So a lot of us are like, why would I ever retell the plot of a video game in a review? Because everyone knows. My professor oh, but there is no professor here, is there? Hence and thus, on YouTube, it is often helpful if you're doing a review of a long RPG to recount the story to some degree, even if it's only in bytes, to give people a picture so when you actually get to your synthesis moment and, you know, critique, people understand what you're actually talking about. There is some degree of difference and separation from how you would write for a professor and this, but I understand where the criticism comes from, especially from academics, because it makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, it is usually understood that everyone is on the same page. It's just not the case on YouTube necessarily. There is some gray area. Anyway.
Yeah. It's a mass product at the end of the day, whether it's got 10 views or 1 million, like it's for a lot of people. So you can't assume prior knowledge. Even though I just said you should be able to. I wish you could.
That's the thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wish you could presume that prior knowledge more so than you actually in reality can.
Yeah. I will say, because people are like, well, this sounds contradictory. And it's like, the answer is, if you're the creator, you're writing for who you want on your side in the first place. If you want like people who are all informed and all that, then just write for them and that's fine. But you got to make the choice.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. But speaking of audience members and who a creator might want in their audience, in your Monster Hunter series review, you speak a lot about like this idea of retro games being viewed as archaic, or the dreaded word like jank. What would you say is the benefit of going back to games that the mass audience has maybe deemed as not playable in the modern day? And I mean, we live
you know
in
what's so sad about all of that, right? Is just so many people, because I was there. The modern gamer who doesn't really dig too deep into the medium and just plays new video games because video games are fun and cool, isn't really concerned about the medium and the medium's strengths per se, or finding that like really, what's the word? It's like high taste experience, Epicurean experience. They're not looking for that. They're looking for, this game was fun and it played good and I liked it, which is fine.
It was frictionless.
Yes, I am critical of that person now, because while I was that person, I've been entrenched in the medium so long, I'm now playing stuff like Nobunaga's Ambition to feel something. So
you're a real masochist.
Yeah, seriously. So, I'm looking for unique, interesting things, because there's a point where you play the modern thing and you buy the modern thing and you turn into that guy who uploads the video like, modern gaming just doesn't feel like anything anymore. And it's like, no,
my least
the problem is
dude.
You checked out of the medium and do not care to look for yourself. You're relying on other people to sell you something. And that's the problem. I don't have this problem, so when I go back to old Monster Hunter, it's like, yeah, this is kind of fucking hard, and honestly, kind of, I don't like stick controls, but you know, whatever. It conveys something about the narrative of the game and highlights something about Monster Hunter that modern ones maybe necessarily don't as well, even if they're very fun and good.
You are sort of the bridge, though, right? Like, you are the guy at least attempting to sell the disengaged gamer the original Monster Hunter, are you not? Like, in your videos, is that not the role you sort of play?
You are 100% correct about that.
Right.
I don't want to speak down to the modern gamer necessarily. As someone who was them, I know them. I think they could find joy if they looked for it and played things with intention rather than letting people sell them what joy is supposed to look like. That's all.
Yeah. That idea of you being that bridge and sort of this idea of the video essayist or the reviewer playing a game for their audience is an interesting one, and one that I think there are some creators that have become like almost quite explicit about, like, oh, you don't need to play this game because I've played it for you, whether it be like a review or a let's play. And once I understand that to a certain extent, especially with games that are, you know, untranslated or lost media, even though that's hardly really a real thing, in terms of what we're talking about now, at least. What are your thoughts on people treating your videos as a good enough experience, a good enough taste of a game to
Nothing
not
makes me more
engage
ill
further? Right. Okay. Interesting.
Because the thing is, I very much... Okay, there are people in the world who conceptualize me as some like flagrant asshole about like KBash hated fucking Metroid or something, so like he would be mean to me in a conversation if I was like, I like Metroid, and he'd be like, Metroid suck. I'm so far away from that person. I very much value the unique differences in every human being. I find it awesome and fascinating that people love different things. I don't want anyone to love exactly the same things I do just because I like them. Most of them don't. And I'd much rather people engage with stuff that means something to them and pull their own unique meaning out of those things. And that's why my videos can never, ever account for a person's full experience. It's been baked into my criticism since the beginning, though people don't always pick up on it necessarily, that I am just one lived experience. No one can give you your lived experience.
I think that you center that in a way that does make that quite clear. And
I hope so.
You don't take this like super authoritative voice that sort of doesn't leave room for other opinions like some people do. There is definitely a you invite people to engage and to find what they will like about these things instead of trying to say something definitive, which I think is an approach that is commendable and sort of needed, especially due to the prevalence of people going, you know, I've watched an iceberg video about this game, so I basically completed it 100%, you know.
Oh God.
I don't want to bring up Persona 5 fans too much, but that was like the big criticism of that fandom at a certain point, was that a lot of people were engaging with it from this outside perspective, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing at all.
Oh, sure.
But when the flagship piece of media within a franchise is sort of engaged with as a choice, like,
yeah,
you don't necessarily have to play the game that the fandom is named after. That it just seems so reductive and so like it's very indicative of our time, of like, if I can't consume it quickly and in like a bite-sized way, then it's not for me, man.
Like I have to be clear that I'm not going to disparage anyone who's too like unprivileged to experience, because games can be expensive, sure.
Of course,
but it is profoundly anti like video games to not play something and then presume to know the experience. It is antithetical to the medium at its core to do so. And one should not presume to understand something in full if they have not personally experienced it, specifically with video games. That's all.
Yeah. That, I mean, the interactive element of video games basically makes that essential, right? Like, you are not going to have the same experience as anybody else playing this thing. So it's essential to talking about video games. It's essential to understanding video games. Also essential to understanding video games. Great segue, me. In your Steambot Chronicles review, you say that we as critics should focus on narratives that use the medium's strengths well, not necessarily ones that tell good stories.
Yes.
What are some examples within the games you've covered and games that you're a fan of maybe not necessarily the greatest story on paper, but one that uses the strengths of the medium to tell that story in an effective way?
I will, just for a hint of context for people who are like, what do you mean I shouldn't care about good stories?
Yeah,
Because
please.
someone will for sure. I am, as someone with a background in creative writing and teaching and a lot of reading, I'm very often unimpressed by the actual quality of written word in video games because the medium itself is challenged in such a way that it is not conducive to receiving novel quality writing necessarily. This goes to development constraints. This goes to publisher constraints. It's a multi-layered issue. Regardless, there are many games that use their mechanics and their unique form of presentation, their medium, take advantage of their medium to tell a story that is impressive for the medium, that is uniquely video games, which is what I care about so much and why I like games like Steambot Chronicles so much. Regardless of whether the story is of high quality or not, the game puts the player into the world directly in such a thorough way and makes one engage with it in that level that you become part of that world and realize its limitations and challenges for the full context to the video. There are other games that do this. I had to literally pull out a list. Things like Little Goody Two Shoes, which I covered just last year. I loved for putting the player in the role of Elise by making her situation, which by the way, the character is kind of off-putting and greedy and weird. But the player is made to understand her very thoroughly because you are made to fight for gold doing these stupid, repetitive mini games until it's man, it really sucks having to earn a fuck ton of money, having to perform well to earn the most money, lose mostly all of it for bread, while you're getting coerced or extorted for food by the local snitch who's going to call you a witch, and if she succeeds, you'll be burnt at the stake. The game is fascinating for doing that very well and puts you in the role very well. I also want to highlight, this is a really minor one, but to keep this truncated, because I also like, Warcraft 3, Shadow of the Colossus, etc. There's a character in The Last Blade 2, which is a fighting game kind of like Samurai Showdown. And this one character has a story that differs depending on how the player plays the game. If the player plays the game normally like a casual, they'll mash, they'll do some normal stuff, the enemy will die and they'll get the normal ending. Girl gets a boyfriend, she's fine, they have a happily ever after, whatever. The player lands a super turbo kill that's very precise to perform at every round to kill their enemy. They get an ending where she slowly descends into madness and eventually becomes a cold-blooded killer because the player's expression, mastery of the mechanics, has now manifested in the character. It's incredible for a game that has such a thin story. That's all.
No, that sounds super cool. I will have to check that out. I'm going to go on a side note real quick and ask, I assume the answer is yes. And then I assume the answer to the follow-up question is yes. You love Steambot Chronicles. Have you played Raw Danger?
I haven't. What the heck? Wait, what's that?
Whoa.
Wait, did you say Raw Danger?
Raw Danger, yeah. Raw. My English accent is maybe confusing.
Is that the Disaster
Report 2? It is.
Right. No, I've not played them, but I meant to. Right.
Wow. Okay. Yes. If you like Kazuma Kujo's work in Steambot Chronicles and that real feeling of tactility in a world,
yeah,
Raw Danger is that condensed into 10 hours.
Oh shit. Okay.
It's my favorite video game of all time. It runs on the same engine as Steambot Chronicles, so the emulation is not great, but it's an experience, and if you like the work of Kazuma Kujo, then please check it out.
Yeah, now I'm really excited. I got to check that out.
I'm an evangelist for Raw Danger. I mean, I just finished a game design bachelor's degree, so
Oh shit!
we're in the
Congrats.
bachelor degree. Thank you. We're in the bachelor degrees club. But I remember sort of showing up on the first day of that, and we did a round table of like, what's everyone's favorite game, and I said Raw Danger, and not a whisper, just nothing. Just
And everyone else
absolute-
said Persona 5. Okay.
no, actually, funnily enough, and I don't want to disparage anybody. I never want to disparage anybody. A lot of Call of Duties and FIFAs was what I heard.
No,
That was a shock and a wake up call and a snap back to reality moment for myself.
right. Just how niche us weird people are. Holy moly!
Yeah, I don't want to like blow smoke up our asses too much, but that was the feeling I got. It was an odd feeling, but yeah, Raw Danger. And then I was like, okay, have you heard of Moon Remix RPG Adventure maybe? And even less. I think someone passed out at that point. But,
Oh my god!
yeah,
No.
you would keep the cause alive for the weirdo games. So yeah. But let's talk about something slightly less weirdo, but non-conventional nonetheless. I've heard you speak on like controls really informing an experience and how that can sort of make or break one's interactions with a game. In what ways do you think control schemes and general user interface can interact with a game's narrative and themes? And are there any examples that stand out in your mind?
It's my favorite question. Okay. I was supposed to have an essay about this done this year, and yet things have drifted away from me. Controls are narrative. Controls are a profound element of design, and yet a lot of people don't play video games. Like, they don't play fighting games. They don't understand what frame data is. They don't understand how inputs, how they can differ, how player mastery can really impact how an experience goes. And yet, like, I don't know how else to put this. We have this game. Okay, first of all, play experience or whatever. Critique of play and mechanics is very disrespected broadly in video game discussion because many people don't play games at that level in the first place. So you will encounter people who are like, who will play Armored Core and be like, this is clunky and sucks, and put it down, like Armored Core 1 and 2. Armored Core 1 and 2 are fine. They're actually perfectly modern and viable if you can just, take 10 minutes to get a handle on the controls. The same goes for Steambot Chronicles and stuff. And there's this incredible willingness to just write off experiences that don't immediately conform to our expectations. And that is a critical error. So many games use controls to tell stories. And I could go on at length about like the differences between things like MGS3 and its new Delta format, which truncates or like condenses, linearizes, I don't know, turns the controls modern.
Yeah.
And Resident Evil 4 and the remake and how it takes out tank controls and now it's a fully regular like third person what you would expect,
Yeah.
There's so much to say about these things and how they change the flavor purely per how the player interacts with these things. But Steambot Chronicles and Armored Core would not be better games because the player has more immediate instant access over the controls. They rebuff the player, they reject the player and ask the player to come to an understanding, negotiate their relationship with the experience. There's a level of player input that is so necessary. And this is so also indicative of the Wii era as well, because people are how do I say this? We were so willing, and I have done this as well, to call waggling like a gimmick and motion controls a gimmick when it's like motion controls are just another mode of controls. They're not instant access. They're not as immediately fun, but there's something to say about the experience if one is actually paying attention. And I think the best way to illustrate this is to play something like Duck Hunt, okay? And you're playing Duck Hunt with your light gun, and you aim and shoot at the duck, right? There's a game there. You walk up to the screen and you point and click your gun right against the duck, and you get it every time. The game is no longer a game. You have perfect control, but the game is no longer a game. What does that say and what does that mean? I really care about this stuff, and I'll eventually make an essay and talk about it at length. But seriously, like Steambot Chronicles, Armored Core, hop on those if you're a button controls enthusiast. MGS3, those two games are just separate experiences, regardless of if they're like in one. You have to like crawl on the ground and like roll and do everything very precisely and deliberately. And then in the modern version, it's like I can do a combat roll that's like fully 60 FPS 3D animated
and crouch walk and
exactly, and all these weird things. And suddenly the game is very different. That's all.
Yeah. I'm struck by this idea of like controls being, in a sense, like a filter for not a filter for players, but in the same way that the choice of writing style in a novel or an essay or something may structurally add to something, of course, but also inform an audience member's approach to a piece of art, a piece of media. You know,
that's actually perfect, like Blood Meridian or something, or like Cormac McCarthy writing without his quotation marks. So you have to start parsing who's talking based on context clues.
Yes, or even like a David Foster Wallace footnote thing. Like the footnotes become a mechanic unto themselves when reading, in the same way that maybe the claw grip in Armored Core or something that becomes. You know, it not only becomes a part of the work, but it also becomes a shared language for people who engaged with that work. Yeah. You know,
I forgot. I didn't actually mention like a favorite here, but TWEWY is, or The World Ends With You, is really important to the control discussion as well. TWEWY 2, the sequel, doesn't have this split screen play, and you don't control two characters at once. However, that first game has the player with a partner character that's controlled entirely separately from the main character who's on the bottom screen. You are now navigating two personalities because Neku is kind of an asshole and he doesn't work well with others. And you are made to experience that friction through play. That is a story. That is critical. And people call it clunky. It drives me insane. Anyway, go on.
That's the medium right there. That's the point of games, right? That is the literal point. Use of perspective and use of control and visuals can mean so much more within an interactive space, because you have to contend with what is in front of you in such a more direct way than visual mediums otherwise. You know, you can be very passive when watching most films, but with the games that you've just mentioned, like, passivity is basically a complete misunderstanding of the pieces as works, you know, in a similar way to what we were saying earlier about the friction that you add into your videos and how they keep players keep viewers engaged and keep people awake and sort of demand attention. Complex controls, or maybe not even complex, but non-conventional controls, they do the same thing. And you mentioned it a little bit with the Metal Gear Solid 3 discussion, but what are your thoughts about sort of the complete homogeneity of control scheme design in modern games?
While I respect from the teacher perspective, while I respect the desire to make something palatable for people so that they can understand it, I think it also assumes so much of the audience to reduce what once was basically fine and maybe incuriously engaged with to a mushed up version. Like, you don't have an apple anymore, I've made it into sauce, and you are going to have the sauce after I spoon feed it to you. And here comes the airplane, and we're playing MGS3 Delta. And fucking, sorry.
No, I love it. I love the vitriol.
Because there is, again, some games are sharp and weird and have edges and make you rise to their level to a point. I don't want to tell people that you have to get good because I don't want to be a gatekeeping asshole. However, there is a point, a line in the medium where if you're cutting these things away, you are suddenly sanding off the edges and making a very bleary vision of the original version. And that's weird. Like, and fairly disrespectful to the work, one would argue. But again, we as a society are not really caught up on video games as an important medium yet. So this is not really common vernacular in households, but it probably ought to be.
Yeah. But my own thoughts about that, like, I agree with you that there is not a disrespect, just a lack of thought about video games as like crafted artworks that were intentional from their start. But even within films, the most respected like modern art form, right, to some extent, we're seeing this like absolute disrespect towards intention of original creation with stuff like 4K restorations using AI. And so that it's sort of a wider cultural trend of assuming that technical that any friction within any piece of art was just a circumstance of technology of the time or whatever, and everything needs to be ironed out and made completely smooth and smudged over. So it's a thing that we have to deal with. I mean, would you ever, this is another question I did not prepare you for, but would you ever sort of look at a game and its remake to sort of examine something like that? Like, would you ever take up the MGS3, MGS Delta comparison video?
I'm actually handling it right now, just not, it's not my current video, but it's slotted up soon.
That's very exciting. Okay, I won't try and get any spoilers from you, because I actually myself don't want to be spoiled for that. That sounds exciting. Let's start to wrap things up and ask probably the most ridiculous sort of multifaceted question I could ask to end it with. You've made videos in the past which have centered not singular creators, but you have definitely centered lead designers or directors within your criticism. I think it's a really good like narrative hook for a video unto itself, to focus on an individual. But within that, so you've talked about George Kamitami of Vanillaware, Kazuma Kujo, who we mentioned earlier, of Irem, and Hidetaki Miyazaki of From Software, who's obviously probably the most famous name I just mentioned there. What place do you think auteur theory has within games criticism?
Okay. So this one, how do I say this in the most polite way about myself? YouTube as a medium encourages one to, at least I would say in games coverage, to not overindulge on the background noise of any given game, because the game is the subject matter. However, so it becomes easy to, put one guy's face on the screen and be like, this is the guy. Here's his story. Here's all the shit that happened to him and how he changed. How bizarre. However, it is, of course, a ridiculous reduction of design or development reality to put a video game on one individual. It's just a convenient narrative mechanism. Because Metal Gear is not Kojima, because there's a whole team behind Metal Gear. The thing is, though, that if you play Metal Gear, you play Metal Gear, you know it's Kojima, and if you play Death Stranding, you know it's Kojima. Because that didn't design DNA or his peculiarities or the level of clamp he has over the production seems to bleed through regardless. So I dislike auteur theory as a point of discussion. I view it as a realistic point of discussion. I view it as a useful narrative tool for YouTube videos. And I think I've talked about this in a video at some point, but I can't remember where. But yeah, I just rely on faces when it becomes like, because you don't want to talk about like, oh my god, like what's a great, like Kojima again. I don't want to talk about Metal Gear and then talk about the mechanics and then talk about the game designers and all the programmers, because then it becomes a big muddled mess of discussion. Do you know what I mean? Like,
No, I understand it. I find it interesting that you mentioned that you don't like it as a point of discussion, but it is useful as for YouTube videos. I just find it really interesting that, especially within games, the criticism discourse is centered on YouTube, right? That is where this is
yeah,
happening. The discussions, the serious discussions, at least about video games, they seem to be happening on YouTube.
yeah,
And when it is maybe not easier, but when it is more engaging of a video to center a single face, it no wonder auteur theory becomes like a thing unto itself. I mean, even before YouTube, you can imagine with like documentaries about art and all this stuff. So it seems like a natural impulse of just storytellers.
yeah.
We want to hang stories on relatable characters.
Well, yeah, and if you're talking about a Quentin Tarantino film, you're not talking about, the guy who's doing the color grading. You're talking about, unless it's Quentin, you're fixating on him because his ethos bleeds into his work so loudly. At the same time, it may be unnecessary for videos like Steambot Chronicles to even center on Kazuma Kujo. It's just that there's really not many public faces to even talk about otherwise in that company.
You want to humanize these games to
Yeah.
a certain extent, right? Like, and
Yes, exactly.
that's the thing. When you talk about the color grading and stuff, it's interesting though, because I don't necessarily think from like from a perspective of understanding the way games are actually made. I don't know if it is even realistic to expect a creator to like mention a programmer, because and wow, I said programmer really harshly there. Apologies to all of the programmers out there. No shade, but I don't know how necessary it is, because from a literal perspective, the color grader and the programmer sort of have similar roles within a production. They are oh god, is this going to reveal the way I view creation far too much?
Like executors of the vision.
Yeah, they are not the leaders of the vision.
Right.
They are in a way tools of a wider system that has a shared goal. And if that shared goal is being defined by maybe not one person but a small group of people, isn't it only natural to talk about those people?
Yes. And that's the thing. It's not that I want to perpetuate auteur theory. I feel like it's just a kind of necessary consequence of covering things like this. Plus, a lot of the people who show up to do a job and get paid are not in the role of the creative, like in the creative chair, like the director's chair in the first place. So they don't presume to that role in the first place necessarily, though they might. I think there's a good, maybe an unhealthy degree of mythologizing people do on the internet about like how, because I don't know how else to say that.
About Sakurai and stuff?
Yeah, stuff like, it gets silly, I guess. Like, auteur theory is obviously not the intention of, like, when we talk about one guy, but again, it just happens, and it's like, well, here we are. And oftentimes those guys are taking the fall in case the product end of the art fails. Like, the guy who I covered in Folklore, whose name now escapes me, and I apologize, that guy was doing a vlog series where he was, taking culpability for how that game flopped. And that's not something anyone else in that team wants to do. That's his job because he's the director.
Even within your videos, the name I didn't put down that did come to mind when writing that question was Randy Pitchford, because I watched your Borderlands series review when researching for this interview. And I didn't put his name because of the polarizing sense that his name conjures up. But what you were just saying made me think of him, because at the end of the day, auteur theory can sort of go both ways, you know? And I'm sure there are many, many developers who are now in the indie space, or who have aspirations to make their own self-led projects, who may have worked on something at, you know, one of these more corporate publishers, an EA project, a Ubisoft project, that might be on their resume, but they're not necessarily like, yeah, my work on Tom Clancy's Badlands, or what, I can't even think of a Ubisoft game right now, but you get what I'm trying to say.
That's spot on. Like, I'm not going to work at Gearbox so I can put Borderlands 3 as my like creative masterpiece on my resume. Like, holy shit.
Yeah.
No offense, that game's okay.
Yeah. There's an element of it where auteur theory sort of works for jobbing game designers or game devs or game artists, where it's like, yeah, I don't want to own this 6 out of 10 that was released by this company that no one really even played. Like, I want to be known for this itch.io game that I made, or whatever the case may be. So it's an interesting circumstance of the way criticism is commodified as YouTube videos, but also I think because game development is such a big team-led pursuit, it sometimes does actually protect some people from criticism, you know?
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. Oh, it sort of feels like we've naturally come to the end. I mean, I've asked all of the questions I had prepared. Is there anything that came up within the conversation that you wanted to bring back up, or
not? I don't think I had any threads left untied. I think
I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that as a win then. From my perspective. But no, this has been a super interesting conversation, and I hope that me and you both can keep the fight going for the weirdo games and just for taking games a bit more seriously, you know. And I thank you for your videos, because I get that sense from you that you really care about this stuff in a similar way to the way I do. Man. So it's good. It's
Thank
good
you.
to.
It honestly has been such a fun conversation.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Super glad to hear that. I'm excited for the videos that you've hinted at within this discussion, and I can't wait to see the rest of the stuff you upload. And I hope that me and you can keep in touch in general.
Hell yeah. All right.
Cool. Well, thank you for sitting down with me, and have a good one, I guess.
Yeah. See you soon, or not. But I'll catch you on the internet.
Is it bad to say that was a very KBash thing of you to do just then?
That was very KBash, yeah.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're owning it. Cool. Well, thank you, KBash.